Hey, welcome to World Code Updates. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for more updates. On February 11, 2013, the quiet town of Lahad Datu, Sabah, awoke to a day that would change its history forever. As dawn broke, fishermen prepared their nets, and shopkeepers opened their stores. But an uneasy feeling lingered in the air. Something was different. Something was wrong. News spread rapidly. Around 200 armed men had landed in a remote coastal village, sending shockwaves through the community. These men weren't pirates or terrorists, but called themselves the Royal Security Forces of the Sultanate of Sulu and North Borneo, invoking a forgotten chapter of regional history. Their mission was bold and clear: to reclaim what they insisted was their ancestral land, a claim rooted in centuries-old documents and memories. Suddenly, Lahad Datu, once a quiet backwater, was thrust into the global spotlight as journalists and cameras descended on the town. Malaysian security forces responded swiftly, surrounding the village of Tanduo, where the Sulu group, led by Sultan Jamalul Kiram III, had entrenched themselves and fortified their position. Negotiations began, tense and highly public, with both sides refusing to back down as the world watched. The intruders, a striking mix of fatigues and traditional dress, stood their ground, insisting Sabah was theirs by right of history and blood. The Malaysian government stood firm. Sabah was an inseparable part of Malaysia, and its sovereignty was not up for negotiation. Fear and anxiety gripped Sabah's families as the standoff dragged on, with many locking their doors and staying indoors, uncertain of what would come next. The Sulu claim, once a mere historical footnote, now loomed as a real and present threat, reigniting old wounds and unresolved questions. The peaceful rhythm of daily life was shattered, replaced by fear, uncertainty, and deserted streets. After weeks of mounting tension, violence finally erupted, breaking the uneasy silence. Malaysian fighter jets roared overhead, launching airstrikes while ground troops advanced through the palm plantations to retake the village. Gunfire and explosions echoed through the night, lighting up the plantations and sending villagers fleeing for safety. The fighting was fierce and deadly, with both sides suffering heavy casualties in the chaos. When the dust settled, dozens lay dead on both sides, and the true cost of the conflict became painfully clear. The incursion was over, but the scars, physical and emotional, remained etched into the land and its people. The Lahad Datu standoff was more than just a military clash. It revived a centuries-old territorial dispute that had never truly been resolved. It forced Sabahans, Malaysians, and the world to confront a question long ignored: who really owns Sabah, and whose history should prevail? The conflict was a brutal reminder that history's ghosts can return without warning, reshaping lives and destinies in an instant. The standoff changed Sabah's sense of security and identity forever, leaving a legacy of resilience and uncertainty. The world could no longer ignore the unresolved question of Sabah's sovereignty, as the echoes of this forgotten conflict continued to reverberate far beyond its shores. To truly understand the Lahad Datu standoff, we must look back not just decades but centuries into the past, tracing the origins of a dispute that still shapes Southeast Asia today. Sabah's story is deeply intertwined with the rise and fall of the sultanates of Brunei and Sulu, which were once powerful regional kingdoms that influenced trade, politics, and culture across the region. In the late 1600s, the Sultan of Sulu aided Brunei in quelling a rebellion. As a reward for this crucial support, he was allegedly granted control over North Borneo, the territory we now know as Sabah. This pivotal event forms the very foundation of the Philippine claim to Sabah, a claim that has persisted for generations. The story then shifts to the era of colonialism. In 1878, the Sultan of Sulu signed a controversial agreement with Baron von Overbeck, a European adventurer and businessman. The heart of the dispute centers on a single word in that treaty. Did the Sultan lease or cede Sabah? The interpretation of this word has had enormous consequences. The British, and later Malaysia, have always maintained that it was a permanent cession, giving them full sovereignty over the territory. The Philippines, however, insists it was only a lease, arguing that sovereignty was never truly surrendered and that the land rightfully belongs to the Sulu heirs. To this day, Malaysia continues to pay an annual sum to the Sultan's heirs, a payment the Philippines interprets as rent, not as compensation for a sale. This linguistic ambiguity, rooted in a centuries-old document, has fueled more than 100 years of diplomatic tension, legal battles, and nationalistic fervor. The roots of the conflict are tangled in history, language, and the enduring legacy of colonialism, making the Sabah claim one of Southeast Asia's most complex and enduring disputes. Sabah is more than a disputed territory, it's a land of stunning beauty and diversity. Mount Kinabalu towers over ancient rainforests teeming with rare wildlife. Rivers wind to pristine beaches and vibrant coral reefs, making Sabah a global ecological treasure. Economically, Sabah is vital, once rich in timber, now dominated by palm oil, and gas. Losing Sabah would be a major economic blow to Malaysia. But Sabah's greatest asset is its people, a tapestry of indigenous groups, Chinese, Malay, and Filipino communities. Cultures blend in festivals, markets, and daily life. The people of Sabah are proud of their unique identity. They are not just subjects in a geopolitical dispute, they are the heart of Sabah. The land's wealth and diversity make the sovereignty question even more complex. For Sabahans, their home is more than a prize, it's their life. The legal battle over Sabah is a clash of histories, law, and national identity, stretching back over a century. Malaysia's case rests on the 1878 agreement, which it interprets as a permanent cession of territory, not just a temporary arrangement. As the successor to British rule, Malaysia claims full sovereignty, reinforced by the 1963 UN-backed referendum, where Sabahans chose to join Malaysia, a decision Malaysia sees as both legal and democratic. For Malaysia, the people's will is decisive, and the outcome of the referendum is seen as the final word. The Philippines, inheriting the Sulu sultanates' claim, argues the 1878 treaty was a lease, not a cession, and that the Sulu sultanate never intended to give up sovereignty. They see Malaysia's annual payment as rent, proof the land was never truly ceded and that the original owners still have rights. The Philippines also disputes the 1963 referendum, arguing Sabahans never had a real choice and that the process was influenced by outside powers. Each side clings to its narrative, fiercely defending its version of history, and the dispute remains unresolved to this day. For Malaysia, Sabah's status is settled by law and popular will, and any further debate is unnecessary. For the Philippines, the claim is a matter of historical justice and correcting what they see as a colonial era wrong. The annual payment remains a symbol of the unresolved question, a reminder that the issue is far from settled. The two nations remain locked in a legal and diplomatic stalemate, with negotiations often stalling and no clear resolution in sight. The conflict is as much about national pride and identity as it is about territory and resources. The question of Sabah's ownership remains open, leaving the future uncertain for all those involved. For Sabahans, the dispute is not just history, it's daily life. The 2013 Lahad Datu standoff was one of many security threats along Sabah's porous coast. Cross-border crime and kidnappings are constant worries. Military patrols and checkpoints are part of the landscape. The fear affects livelihoods, especially tourism and fishing. Many Sabahans of Filipino descent face suspicion during times of tension, caught between two worlds. Despite these challenges, Sabahans are resilient, focused on family and future. Their main concerns are jobs, education, and healthcare, not distant political claims. They hope for peace, security, and a chance to prosper. The sovereignty debate feels far removed from daily struggles. For most, stability matters more than history. Sabahans want leaders to resolve the dispute peacefully and let them get on with their lives. The border between Sabah and the southern Philippines is more than a line, it's a living connection. For centuries, the Sulu Sea linked communities through trade, family, and culture. Bajau Laut and Suluk peoples share language, traditions, and bloodlines across the border. Markets in Sabah echo with Tausug and Malay, and families span both sides. Migration from the southern Philippines has created a large undocumented population in Sabah, often living in precarious conditions. These human ties enrich Sabah's culture, but also bring social and security challenges. The sovereignty dispute complicates managing migration and border security. For Malaysia, undocumented migrants are a security concern. For the Philippines, the claim makes cooperation difficult. The Sulu-Sabah connection is a reminder. This dispute is about real people, not just lines on a map. 1963 was a turning point for Sabah. As the British prepared to leave, the cobbled commission was sent to gauge local opinion on joining Malaysia. After extensive consultations, the majority favored joining the new federation. The UN confirmed these findings, and Sabah became part of Malaysia on September 16, 1963. For Malaysia and most Sabahans, this was an act of self-determination. The referendum is the foundation of Sabah's modern identity. The Philippines disputes the process, arguing Sabahans weren't given a real choice. For Sabahans, the decision to join Malaysia is central to their sense of belonging. The 1963 referendum remains a key point in the sovereignty debate. For many, it settled the question of Sabah's future. The Philippine claim is seen as a denial of Sabahans' right to choose. Today, most Sabahans are focused on the future, not old disputes. Economic development, jobs, education, and healthcare top their concerns. They see themselves as Malaysians, proud of their diverse heritage. Calls for greater autonomy and a fair share of resources are louder than talk of sovereignty. The idea of joining the Philippines is alien to most. Sabah's identity is rooted in its 60 years as part of Malaysia. The Lahad Datu incident was a reminder of unresolved issues, but also reinforced the desire for peace. Sabahans want security, development, and to be left in peace. Their allegiance is to progress, not the past. The real question is, how can Sabah become a better place for future generations? The Sabah dispute is a legacy of history, but its future belongs to Sabahans. Any solution must prioritize their welfare and aspirations. Malaysia and the Philippines should focus on cooperation, security, development, and opportunity, rather than old grievances. Investing in Sabah's prosperity and autonomy is Malaysia's strongest argument for sovereignty. The people's sense of belonging grows when they see real benefits. Ultimately, Sabah's story will be written by its own people. Their overwhelming desire is for peace and a better future. The future of Sabah must be decided by Sabahans themselves.